Welcome everyone to Book Study 22 of Unfolding Consciousness, Exploring the Living Universe and the Intelligent Powers in Nature and Humans, written down and thoroughly explained and referenced by Dr. Eddie Villamoria. Today we continue our series on death. Death is transition, time at the door of eternity, from Unfolding Consciousness, Volume 2, and we're on page 68 in here. Thank you for being here. These book studies are all about you. You're the reason that I do what I do. I want to get these out into the world so they're accessible, free for you. Every comment is read and valued, and I do my best to apply to each and every one. This collection of the ancient teachings, to me, is so valuable and timely. I wish to help make them available for everyone. That's what this series is for. So remember, your interaction, your comments and questions are everything, and hopefully we can make this as interactive as possible. I'm thinking about going live, hopefully. Early on in my studies of Theosophy and the perennial philosophy, and when beginning to understand more of our whole story, that consciousness does not end at physical death, I wrote down a little poem. I've shared it in eulogies that I've read, and I've also published it in a book and online, and I thought revisiting it really does comfort me, and I thought it would be refreshing possibly to share it here with you before we begin our book study. Death. Death is not personal. It is as much a part of the natural cycle as birth, the inevitable transition for each and every one of us. Life is but a day. Some go to sleep early, others stay up late, but no one sleeps forever. You will awaken again, the love and lessons lived, not lost. The sun rises and sets, the moon waxes and wanes, tides come in and go out. Civilizations rise and fall, as does your chest with the breath of life, a constant cycle from the moment that you got here and until the last one in this physical incarnation. God does not take anyone from you. You are not a victim. Death comes to each and every one of us. So instead, see that you have been given everything, and it is up to you what you do with it while you are here. So let's begin. Our helpful yellow Postit notes that are here on the pages inside Unfolding Consciousness today are separation and gestation. Plutarch on death. And what did Christ mean by being born again? We hear that a lot. What does that mean, being born again? The second life review is followed by what is known in occultism as a death struggle, which seems to imply a conscious experience of suffering and pain, but is in fact the natural separation of the higher ego from the personal elements in the man's experience. The struggle is between the higher manas and the lower manas, the higher and lower mind. The former in association with buddhi, comprising the upper duad, that's two, and the latter identifying with kama, constituting the middle duad. Here we go, let's take a look at that. So here we are looking at the first column here. You can see the lower triad, the middle duad, the upper triad there, and there are the principles of man. So these are very helpful. I'm going to try to incorporate these into our lessons. Thereafter follows a gestation period in order to assimilate or digest the spiritual aroma of the past life into the higher egoic entity. Eddie describes this in the next section, so we'll get there. Unless there are unusual circumstances in the former earthly life, such as a premature death by violence or suicide or any other reason, the gestation period for the average person may last for many years. Now that is in terms of earth time. A side note here, near-death experiencers, many note that there is no time after death, that time is simply an earthly construct. Now, after which consciousness returns in the sense of an awakening from the state of deep slumber. The mysterious question of the time period in Devachan, which is heaven, will be elaborated upon shortly. Meanwhile, we now move to the second transition, the second death, from the astral, the psychic consciousness, to spiritual consciousness. The second transition from astral life in Kamaloka, the place of desires, to spiritual life in heaven or Devachan. The separation of the immortal upper triad from the lower portions which remain as the Kamarupa, the Sanskrit term for desire body. So this separation is known as the second death, as just described. It is profoundly significant and well symbolized by the butterfly emerging from the chrysalis, stripped of the obstructions of his last mortal remnants. Man is reborn as his true immortal self, the upper triad, and on the higher plane known as Devachan, there to remain until the hour for a new physical incarnation arrives under the divine law of harmony and adjustment, also known as karma. This is depicted in the third column here. So let's take a look at that table again. Okay, third column. You see the upper triad, your true self, Atma, Buddhi, Manas, higher mind. And then down below, you see born again in Devachan. Second life review. Okay, that's important. Awakening and subsequent incarnation on earth. And I know a lot of people think, I'm only going to stay here this time. This is my last one. But we are eternal beings. So don't worry too much though, because reborn here does not exactly mean physical reincarnation, which will be explained. We will explain that in more of our Death is Transition book studies. So stick around. Out of several examples that could be cited from philosophy and religion regarding the significance of the second death, Eddie states the following two are striking. Plutarch says, the death we die is of two kinds. The one makes man 2 out of 3. The other makes him 1 out of 2. So, by using the simple division of man into spirit, soul, and body, the first death is the loss of the body, leaving man with 2 out of 3. And the second death is the withdrawal of the spirit from the kamarupa, the desire body, making 1 out of 2. So let's take a look now at the biblical story of Nicodemus. Many of you should be familiar with this, possibly. A ruler of the Jews who visited the Christ by night, hoping to find out more about his teachings, because no man can do these miracles except God be with him. So in reply, Jesus said to Nicodemus, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Being one of the Pharisees, therefore meticulously keeping with the letter of the law, for example, the dead letter, exoteric means commonly known, interpretation of the Jewish faith, the confused Nicodemus remarked, how can a man be born again when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? That's the literal translation. Now, there are at least two profound conclusions that can be drawn from the Christ's admittedly perplexing comeback that a man be born again. The first one is in line with the second transition just outlined, but one could hardly expect Christ to communicate esoteric truths in an Aramaic tongue to a very literal-minded Nicodemus about the breaking down of the chrysalis, the kamarupa, the desire body, to release the butterfly, the immortal triad of Atma, Buddhi, Manas in Devachan. Instead, he states, the wind bloweth where it listeth. That means where it pleases. And thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell whence it cometh and whither it goeth. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. The Christ then points out that what a man sees and understands depends on his state of consciousness. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I said unto thee, ye must be born again. Then still to the bewildered Nicodemus, if I have told you earthly things, and ye believe not, how shall ye believe if I tell you of heavenly things? This is but a cursory insight into the Christ's mystical words about being born again after the second death, all so perplexing to Nicodemus, who could not figure out how a man could enter his mother's womb twice. Esoteric insights from the Kabbalah into his own religion, as the Christ admonished, art thou a master of Israel, and knowest not these things, might have furnished the Pharisee with the insight needed to distinguish the physical uterus from the kamarupa, namely the womb of the physical man, from the chrysalis of the spiritual man. The second possible reasoning is to do with spiritual rebirth in the present lifetime. In the mysteries, it was customary to refer to initiates as phœnixes, of men who had been born again from the fiery ashes of their own destruction. So, just as physical birth gives man consciousness in the physical world, so the neophyte, after the various degrees of initiation in the womb of the mysteries, was born into a consciousness of the spiritual world. I'm going to say that again. Listen. The second possible reasoning is to do with spiritual rebirth in the present lifetime, in this one lifetime. In the mysteries, it was customary to refer to initiates as phœnixes, or men who had been born again. For just as physical birth gives man consciousness in the physical world, so the neophyte, after various degrees of initiation in the womb of the mysteries, was born into a consciousness of the spiritual world. Go, Eddie, go! What this means in practical terms is that all burdensome obstacles such as material possessions, sensual cravings, outworn intellectual concepts, and religious crusts must be disposed of and gotten rid of. Otherwise, it is easier for a camel to go through a needle's eye than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. That is from Luke 18:25, King James Version. A similar proverb, similarly to the biblical gospel, is in the Holy Quran. To those who reject our signs and treat them with arrogance, no opening will there be of the gates of heaven, nor will they enter the garden until the camel can pass through the eye of a needle. Such is our reward for those in sin. Before inquiring into these heavenly things, what does Christ mean by the terms man and kingdom of God? The former, obviously, does not refer to the physical man who has died, but to the upper middle principles, the human soul. Strictly speaking, the human ego. So let's take a look at this graphic. This is from chapter 3, table number 8 in book 2. The latter refers to what is known in occultism as Devachan. We move on to consider the life and consciousness of man in Devachan, the state halfway between two lives on earth, into which the human ego enters after the second death, after its separation from its lower aspects or sheaths. That is coming up next week. Our title is Postmortem Consciousness in Devachan, the Kingdom of the Gods. Love this. I love this with you. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, if you would like a copy of this 4-volume set for your library, you get 20% off with the exclusive book study discount code, which is UC Book Study. I am so grateful that you are here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. If these teachings resonate with you and you recognize and apply them, it is by doing that leads to our own self-transformation, the phoenix, which leads to global transformation. I am eternally grateful for Dr. Eddie Villamoria for his decades of dedication in putting this essential text together. There has never been a better or more timely time for humanity. It's unfolding consciousness, exploring the living universe and the intelligent powers in nature and humans. We've been in volume 2, which is peering down the microscope, man's internal landscapes. I love you, and I will see you next week. Thank you for being here.